Up. That's all right. Johhny, welcome to the show.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, I was talking about redheads, and I'm not going to go into bald.
Don't go bald. Never go bald.
You know, Telly Savalas. That's like the most famous bald. You ever heard of him with the lollipop?
Yeah, no, I watched Telly Savalas the whole time.
I can tell you a
bald,
story.
haven't we?
That's all right. Looks good though. You've got a great head. You know, you got to have a great head.
We have gone bald though, haven't we? I think we are going bald. Anyway.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so exciting to have you here. Tell the folks a little who you are, where you come from, and why you talk that way. Because we can give you an American accent if you like.
I
Take that home with
am,
you.
as you know, Johhny Diamond. I'm Washington correspondent for the British Broadcasting Corporation. When I leave the Beltway, I suddenly become the North America correspondent for the BBC. I spend most of my time traveling around this extremely fine country, telling stories for Britain and for around the world on the BBC domestic radio and BBC World Service about America, social, political, economic stories about the United States.
So you heard my rant. Okay. Where do you disagree? Am I off somewhere? Or where am I delusional? Or where do you agree?
I don't know. How long have you got?
Go right ahead. Matter of fact, as much time as you need.
No, look, it's without wanting to dodge your question, it is not my place to start proclaiming my politics. I don't think they're of huge interest to anyone. What I'll say is what I was telling the great guests you've got here who also became my interviewees, which is what is so exciting for, I think, any European journalist, and you may have another one dragged.
Yes, I look forward to it.
What any European journalist working on politics in America is the passion that there is about politics here, and the feeling, whether it's amongst the Democrats or Republicans, whether it's Tea Party or Occupy, the feeling that you can change things in America, that this is still in some way a revolutionary country, that you can change the national debate, that you can change the direction of the country, that you can go from Reagan to Obama, that you can, almost without mentioning it, have a black Secretary of State followed by a black female Secretary of State followed by a black president. This is a country where change happens, it seems, much more naturally than it does in a lot of countries, especially European countries, and I was a Europe correspondent before that. And that's why it's a fascinating place to come to. And it's fascinating to come here, it's fascinating to be in stone halls in New Hampshire when they're trying to work out who they want to select, and they come out on a Sunday afternoon to spend 3 hours listening to candidates or their proxies discuss it. There is passion in politics here, which there is not in a lot of Europe.
So why is that? What is the reason?
Whoa! Hey.
What?
It's built into your DNA. I mean, it's what America is. It's this feeling that government comes from, or should come from, the bottom up. And I mean, I know that's the credo, obviously, of the local Tea Party groups. But it's not just the Tea Party, it is across politics as I see it. Now, I get a different perspective, obviously, when I'm in Washington. And Washington,
Imagine that.
Yeah, Washington can seem incredibly remote from nearly everywhere else in the US. So you have a tension about the passion of people on the ground and the necessity for a fairly large federal government. That necessity may be because of Social Security, it may be because you want a big military, it may be all kinds of different reasons, but this is a big country that demands big organization. And there is a tension, and it seems to me that at this time that tension is becoming very raw, and the feeling amongst some people is that accountability has been lost, and they are very upset about that. And for a journalist, it is exciting to cover, and it's particularly exciting to cover in a country like America, where people are incredibly hospitable and very, very vocal.
Well, thank you for the compliment, by the way. I'll tell you, a lot of people are concerned about how they're viewed, how America's viewed. I think more politicians, if you go to Washington, you see more concerns out there about how the Middle East thinks of us or how Europe thinks of us. And I think a lot of the pushback you feel is that we're really the same. We're the same people. We're a good people. We try to help as many people as possible. And the bad people don't like that. And there's more and more bad people out there rising up. And it feels like to the average American that sometimes we're alone. Sometimes we're really the ones that are constantly having to lead the fight to really define there is evil in the world. Bad does exist, and it does rise up. Towers fell because of some bad people doing some bad things. And we could go back to for our country, we could go back to December 7th, 1941, when things happened in Hawaii, right? But the bottom line is, for us as a country, I would agree with you completely. Revolution, it isn't to throw it out there. We're constantly rebelling. But I think what's happening is we're getting close to the nerve. We're getting really down to, like quoting Lincoln, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. And the politician has played the game so long that now, they've played the game to the point that we're $16 trillion in debt. You're right, we have a very strong military that becomes even more cumbersome to deal with because we feel that we need to be in a lot of places at once. But we feel sometimes that we're alone out there, that there's not a lot of countries that want to come and help defend what freedom is.
When you're the big boy on the block, people throw stones at you.
Sure.
And I don't think America lacks confidence to stare down people throwing stones at it. I mean, I'll pick up on a couple of points if I could. Just
Sure.
give a couple of responses.
Absolutely.
That for every group of people that you might see on your television screens rather photogenically burning an American flag, there are other people who understand that America is at times a hugely impressive force for freedom as well. You discussed your view of the news media. Media selects and edits. You may think it does so with an agenda. I understand that it does so out of necessity. But there are lots of right-thinking people who look at America much more coolly than those who burn the American flag. And the second thing I would do is draw on an experience which I had today at the Institute for Texas Cultures, or Texas Culture, which was a naturalization ceremony for 238 now citizens. And they were amongst the tens of thousands of people still knocking on America's doors. So, yes, there are people that dislike America, and there are huge numbers of people who would want to come here, live by the laws here, prosper here, have their children here. It's, I think, up to Americans to take a balanced view of the world beyond, as it is for the world beyond to take a balanced view of America.
Right. Well, what's the saying? Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. And the more we try to grow freedom, and the more we try to stop negative agendas in other parts of the world, some say we shouldn't do that. Some say we should not. We should bring troops home, not care about what happens in the other parts of the world, and just come home. And there's a growing number of those people saying, you know what? Let's just pull them all home. And if that happened, there's this huge vacuum that will happen. And then who's there to pick up the pieces? Who's there to, we're sending people, the big issue we have right now is that we are all over the world, and we're constantly defending on the front line. And we see more and more cycling of our youth going in and battling. Many. We have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, TBI. Our military is obviously a very, very big part of our spending that we have. But what I don't see, and here's why I push back on the press, we don't see it in our press. We don't see the rest of the world loving us. We don't see them standing up and the opposite. They don't see it. For every flag burned, I don't see 500 being waved. I don't see in Britain or in Japan or in China. I don't see them anywhere. And I'm not saying it's not happening, I'm just saying we don't see it. And that's a press issue because people, as you know, are fed through the press. It's the food of the mind, and it's how people learn what they believe is the truth. And we don't see that. And so that's our own problem too, by the way. We need to make sure that when it happens, but we don't see that here. So you say that's the feeling out there, but we amongst the people don't get to see that often.
Look, it's a feeling out there, and it is a function of news media, I'm afraid, that they tend to report bad news, not
Sure.
good news. And, you know, people moderately content with America's role in the world is not a headline that is going to get people reading a news article, I'm afraid. But you look at opinion poll surveys, you see different levels of support. Of course, they come and go. You look at what happens when America was attacked, and you look at the support that came from various different countries at various different times, and you will see that America does have supporters. But as I say, when you are the big boy on the block, and Americans are big and they're quite often confident and sometimes a little noisy, and they upset.
Wait a minute. Wait a second.
They upset delicate Europeans. You know, you have to be ready to take a bit of criticism as well. And I can tell that is extremely wearing when you are paying so much in blood and treasure. But it is simply a fact of the American century, and that century that still continues.
So what do you see out there? What's the pulse you're seeing? You know, as you travel around, you know, when people say the BBC, they think, wow, the BBC, it goes everywhere. It gets in and it gets the story. And, you know, what are you seeing out there? What's the pulse that you see from your perspective? Are you optimistic? Do you meet people that are more, not you personally, but do you meet more people that are optimistic out there about the world or pessimistic about the world?
I can't really talk about the world because I cover the US.
Okay, how about in America?
In America, it's quite difficult to find an American who says that they are not broadly optimistic. However, I have to say one of the big themes that has come out in the last year and a half has been a sense that things are not going to be as good for people's children as they are for them. And that's a relatively new thing. So it's something that comes and goes with economic circumstances, certainly. And I think the judgment appears to be that things are gradually getting better, although it's been a very slow haul. But in general, there is an underlying concern about America from people that I talk to.
So we'll go here today. We're with New Revolution Now, Austin Tea Party. Thousands of people are involved in it, right here in the great state of Texas. And you're here. Why is that important? What's different about that? Why is it a story? Because like you said, you got to get the juice to get people to pay attention. What's so unique about it? Why is it story worthy?
Look, this is my fourth visit to Texas in a year and a half, and I come to Texas because in lots of different ways, Texas is the future of America, and Texas and its ways are part of the grand tradition of being a laboratory of democracy. It's a hugely exciting place to be. The place is a ferment of ideas and change. And that's why Texas is so interesting. As for the Tea Party, as I say, it appears in some of its aspects to be part of the grand tradition of revolutionary politics in America. And I'm obviously talking about peaceful revolutionary politics. And it has clearly had an impact on local, state, and national politics. And it looks like it will continue to do so. And that's what brings me here tonight.
Well, I thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig. It's been great to talk to you.
It is a pleasure to have our brothers across the pond who share red, white, and blue here with us, because ultimately, yes, and we have freedom of the press, and we do push back, and there is a balancing act. We have a blind lady of justice, and her job is to stand on the top of the courthouse, and not just to shut her eyes, but to cover them and to weigh by the merit of what the arguments are on what is right. And that is not always an easy thing to do. and we're doing the best that we can here. And we know that you have your own battles in Britain, and it's a wonderful place there too. And a friend of mine said to say hello to the chap. So there you go. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Ray.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Johhny Diamond.